Julia, and I'm from the Orkney Islands, and I'm a hoof trimmer. So just a wee bit about me. I studied for 3 years in Edinburgh, where I gained a HND in animal science and a degree in agriculture. From there, I then travelled to New Zealand and I worked in various livestock sectors. And then I came home and I was a dairy herdswoman for a local farm, and that's where my first interest in feet trimming started. In 2022, Healthcare Orkney was developed, and I offer 2 services, both hoof trimming and cattle pregnancy scanning. These 3 years seem to have flown past, and it's an honour to be here speaking to you today. So as well as running Healthcare Orkney, my partner and myself own a beef and sheep farm. The farm is called Backakelby, and it's a short drive from our local town. We have 165 breeding cows, with the majority calving in spring, and 250 breeding sheep, which lamb mid-April onwards. I do try to take time away from feet trimming to do the lambing. So these are just a few of our animals. So within our flock we have pedigree sheep, hill Cheviots and Texels, and within our beef herd there's pedigree Limousin's and Shires. And this is a view from our farm in the springtime, so it's very pretty. So the Orkney Islands are located at the north of Scotland. We are accessible by boat or by plane. And we consist of a group of 70 islands, of which only 20 are inhabited. So we are up in the red there. The mainland of Orkney is 523 square kilometres, and our population is 22,000. Our main industries are tourism, renewables, farming and fishing. Due to our climate and location, the land type is predominantly improved pasture, and our arable crops include feed barley, oats and various fodder crops such as rape, kale and turnips. So this is just a few. This is Orkney on a good day. So Orkney agriculture, this is the cattle sector. All our farms are family owned. And we're a very cattle dense area, as you can see from the map, we're deep purple. Due to being surrounded by the sea, Orkney's level of disease would tend to be lower than a lot of areas of the Scottish mainland. We are TB free and we are also BVD free. As of 2024, there was 476 holdings across Orkney, and it's out as with a total number of cattle sitting at 74,444. This is your young stock right up to your breeding cows and bulls. So when I put this into a ratio of cows to people, it equals 3.4 cows to every person. So the majority of my trimming would be done on beef farms, as 98% of the cattle holdings on Orkney are home to beef cattle. The farms I visit can range from anywhere from 7 cows to 350 cows, and no day will be the same. We have a vast array of breeds here in Orkney, with a mixture of native breeds such as Angus, Shorthorns and Lynx, to continental breeds such as Shires, Limousins, Simmentals, etc. All breeds have their advantages and disadvantages when it comes to feet, as you can imagine. The dairy sector, as you can see, is much smaller in Orkney, with only 11 farms making up 2% of the cattle holdings. The size ranges from a few traditional setups sitting with around 30 cows, a few in the middle sitting around 120, and then a few larger scale at 300. Hardware-wise, Orkney has a bit of everything, from herringbone swinglebirch. We've got a Delaval rapid exit. There's a new rotary gone in the past 2 years, and history has just been made by one of my customers, as he is in the process of installing 2 robots, which is really exciting. Breed-wise, Holstein Friesian would make up the bulk of the number, but there is also a strong presence of Montbéliard genetics and Fleckby, and more recently Danish Red. There's also a small number of Jerseys throwing their weight about. All the milk produced by the cows is processed on the island by a farmer-owned dairy cooperative called Orkney Cheese. The cheese is marketed globally with 1,200 tonnes being exported out every year, and France is currently the largest customer. The dairy industry, although small in Orkney, is actually in a very exciting place in the sense they are needing more milk to be produced. So this does mean that dairy farmers are being encouraged to up their numbers, but it also means there is potential for new entrants within the sector. So this is really exciting as a hoof trimming business. A typical day for me, because we've got the farm and everyone I'm going to has jobs to do before I arrive, I try and arrive for 8:30/9. Depending on the number, I will do 1 to 3 farms a day. In the winter, I can be out 6 to 7 days a week because it is quite a mad rush with the majority of cows calving in the spring. I do lose time travelling to our outer isles. The longest ferry journey is 2 hours. But I gain time when people put the correct number in and have a setup that flows. The weather can play havoc, especially in the winter. These are kind of typical scenes. Horrible boat journeys. So with that in mind, Orkney's cattle will be in more than they're out. They tend to be housed for 7 months of the year, and the majority of Orkney's buildings are indoor concrete strata buildings with large capacity tanks underneath for slurry storage. 2 seconds. Recently, rubber slats have been becoming more and more popular, although an initial large cost to buy. The comfort that they can give the cows is worth it. As you'll all be aware, they simply just clip onto your existing slats and are very durable. The pros to these mats definitely outweigh the cons. However, they don't wear cattle's feet the same, and I do tend to see more overgrown hooves after a winter on rubber. This can be sorted, however, with a quick trim, and normally as simply as just having long toes. Alongside slatted buildings, there are still a small number of traditional farms which have tie stalls. I don't tend to see many cows from these systems. However, when I do, one thing I notice is how hard the feet are, just from being kept that bit drier. Dairy setups would all be cubicle housing. Here's an example of a newer setup where there are cubicles with slats between to keep the area clean. This will be scraped out twice a day before milking. This particular herd would have quite a low level of digital dermatitis. Where they are eating is also kept relatively clean. Some of the dairy farms have automatic scrapers in place, and with these herds I do tend to see more trauma to dew cause. These are all things which get discussed, and I have already had farms having a rethink on their setups. There would be a small percentage of cattle housed on bedding also, which again is where I would tend to see more flare-ups of digital dermatitis and overgrown feet as the winter progresses. Bulls would tend to either be kept in bedded pens with hard standing where they can eat, or in pens with rubber mats on the flooring. In the UK, it is a law to house bulls in areas where they can see and hear other animals and machinery, and in a pen big enough that they can exercise. You can no longer have a bull tied up for winter. The photo at the top left shows our bull housing. They have deep bedding, which then leads them onto a concrete passage braced slightly where they eat, so they put less pressure on their front feet. so mobile unit and kit. The first chute was bought in 2022 through BD Supplies, second hand. On arrival, we were completely taken aback by the sheer size of the machine. We then decided to have a run through of getting it unloaded. Around an hour later, we were both near in tears, thinking, what have we done? A quick phone to Brian and a how-to video sent back, and eventually got the chute unloaded. If that wasn't already quite a steep learning curve, we decided the first animal to go through it would be one of our biggest Shire bulls. The green KVK was a great machine. It was robust and handled cows well. However, with the amount of bulls I was doing, I was finding that maybe there was some areas that could make the process easier and more comfortable for them. After a bit of speaking with Brian, we decided it was maybe the right time to consider trading in the trusty green machine and opting for a new KVK. This time galvanised to handle the salt spray of Orkney, but also with some alterations to help with bull comfort. So I got a removable bum bar, a telescopic back paddle, and the biggest difference was that actually the new head yoke, which allows a bit more room at the shoulders for the bulls. So equipment, I use battery operated grinders as I'm not very good with cables. Although these are heavier, I still find them useful. When I first started trimming, I used a 7-blade disc, however moved on to the Trim Tech Hog, which I find helps speed up the process, as it enables me to also model out the claw, and then I will finish off with my knives. I use an array of blocks, both wooden and rubber, and they both have their place. Wraps, I just use standard wraps, but I have seen more eco wraps coming into fashion. And ointment-wise, my go-tos would be salicylic acid, iodine, and epidermal. Biosecurity couldn't be more important, especially when I'm visiting multiple farms per day, but also for our own farm, as the last thing I want to do is take back any disease. Most farms have large pressure washers on farm. However, if I have a new farm, I always check which washing facilities they have. The chute and equipment and myself are washed down after every visit with a DEFRA approved disinfectant. Handling and safety really couldn't be more important when dealing with cattle, and especially beef cattle, as they do tend to be slightly quicker and more unpredictable. As I said before, the majority of my work is beef cows and bulls. Normally the cows are pretty straightforward in the sense they will just head straight in. Bulls, however, can be a bit more tricky, and over time I have found some adjustments that can make the process more smooth and as little stress to the animal and people as possible. For an idea on bull numbers, between March and May I trimmed just under 250 breeding bulls, all large in size. A lot of these bulls are a ton plus, and in these months the hormones are definitely building up as they get ready to head out to their girls. Where possible, I do suggest bulls get tied up prior to me arriving so they don't get too worked up, as the chute is quite often used right at the pen. A lot of bulls are halter trained these days due to stipulations at society sales. So if this is the case, I will ask for the bull to just be walked in. In the case that a halter isn't an option, we just make sure there's a race set up where you can only go one way. I do find patience is best with any animal, but especially bulls. I've never required an electric prodder, and I don't actually own one. I do think they have a place, and for some people they are the answer, but personally I find just letting the animal suss things out and realise me nor the chute are threats to them is enough. As well as animal safety, PPE is important as well. I make sure to wear steel-toe boots, waterproof clothing, neoprene wrist guards, earmuffs, and when I remember to take them off my head, my safety glasses. So the trimming method I was trained in was the Dutch 5-step method. I find this an easy to follow method in trimming feet, but also one that is consistent for both dairy and beef cows. Ideally, I like to see cows walking in an area before they are taken to be trimmed, which most of the time is doable with beef cows, as we are normally working out of a slatted pen. This just mentally helps me work out what might be going on and which foot. However, as you'll be aware, cattle are masters at hiding their troubles. Working with the feet at a more natural and comfortable stance helps hugely with efficiency. I tend to start in the back left, moving anti-clockwise until I finish with the front left, and then I can work the levers to put the cow down and get her out and get the next one in. When I first started trimming 3 years ago, I would say I was quite overwhelmed with some of the feet I had to trim. These are very tame pictures. I've seen a lot worse. There were a lot more problems, such as hugely overgrown feet, where damage had been done due to untreated lesions. Quite often there was maggots. However, I definitely see less of this now, mainly because farmers act faster due to there being a service always available on the island. Before, if they didn't take the vet in to do it themselves, they would wait until a visiting trimmer could come up. Obviously, with the sheer size of some bulls here and the workload they have, it's inevitable that feet troubles arise. But again, I see far less after encouraging more farmers to routine trim their bulls. Definitely once a year, and better if you can look at them twice a year. As I mentioned before, we are not exempt from the dreaded digital dermatitis. However, farmers can tend to take a fairly proactive approach to trying to minimise its spread through feet bathing. It's also been great to get some beef farmers convinced to feet bath, and also it does take time. Most of them that did it last winter reported back that it did help decrease the usual flare-ups they would see as the winter went on. Data and reporting is about as important as trimming the feet. Since becoming a trimmer, I have stuck with the trusty pen and paper with a table I have made up myself, and I print this off before heading out. Most of our farms will be inspected by assurance bodies such as Quality Meat Scotland and Red Tractor to ensure they are complying with the standards set out by each of the bodies. Lameness has recently become more focused on, and therefore important that there is some record I have been on farm, but also allows us to see if a certain cow has improved since our last visit or if there is more to investigate. I understand there are some great programs, but I am yet to discover them. Speaking with the farmer is hugely important to me. I like to make sure they're aware of what I am encountering when I'm trimming, and most of the time this is done at the shoot with the cow. Being able to discuss like this, I think, helps imprint the message better as they can see the feet as I'm explaining. I definitely think there's a lack of understanding of feet trimming, and it was very apparent when I first started trimming, as the farmers seemed to think blood was a good thing. Farmers engage well, I find, and if there's areas that could change to decrease lameness, I have found they are pretty quick to do so. If we don't speak at the shoot, it's not uncommon in Orkney to discuss over coffee and cake. There's a lot of farmers who would tackle some feet themselves, so it's also great to discuss methods and offer advice where I can, and likewise, if they have some for me, I would always take this on board. Well-being and longevity, this profession isn't the easiest on the body, so it's hugely important to do things which are going to mean it can be a profession for many years to come. My main fuel, I won't lie, is a caramel latte. They never fail to set me up for the day. In all seriousness, this is where I find the KVK really helps. As I mentioned earlier, being able to work at a height that suits you makes the job so much easier. I'm obviously not particularly tall, so to be able to choose the height in which the chute sits is also really important to me. Taking precautions such as wearing correct PPE and handling cattle safely also ensures I can go out every day trimming. I do make sure to try and look after my back by attending regular appointments, and I finally am learning that downtime is extremely important no matter what job you're in. I do tend to run on red batteries as the winter comes, so it's important to get out at least for 10 minutes with the dogs between calls if it can happen. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I would just like to finish up with a huge thank you to the audience for listening to my talk on hoof trimming in Orkney. To be in a room full of experts within this industry is truly amazing. My biggest thank you must go to Brian and Joanne from BD Supplies for their support they give, and the team at KDK, especially Dorota, as I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you all kindly inviting me over. It's a dream come true to be here, so thank you all for your time.